r/surviving infidelity stories. Update: wife's friend confirmed cheating. Okay, so this is going to be long, very long. Hopefully, if you comment, you read over it. To start, I will contextualize by stating my wife just left me. I have had problems with her behavior for years, and it has been slowly eating away at me. I'm going to try to include all of my thoughts here, to give a clear picture. I just feel like I need to get this out. Talking is how I deal. You will see that an inability to do this, along with a feeling something wasn't quite right in my relationship with my wife, had a lot to do with poisoning our relationship. We have, up to about a month ago, married for nearly 8 years, and together for about 13. So, to start, I began dating my wife when she was in her first graduate year of college. I can honestly say I was head over heels in love with her. Now, she was very much the opposite of me. I am introverted, opinionated, blunt, and far from charming. She is excessively extroverted, malleable to opinions depending upon the circle, and extremely high energy. I never, at first though, took her for someone shallow, obsessed with opinion, or superficial. Over time, that opinion has very much changed. I learned early in dating that my future wife was very sexually promiscuous. As a matter of fact, a good number of her friends were people she had formerly slept with, and she had a story of making out at one point with nearly every guy friend she had. Now, at this time, I thought, okay, she is a young woman in college, that is just normal behavior. I never thought of myself as a jealous person, and had never really experienced jealousy. Again, this would change drastically. All names I use will be false, BTW. I don't think they will matter to those here anyway. So, to start, the very first week I was seeing her, she told me not to call or visit her because her close friend Jerry was coming into town and staying at her place. She said she wanted to be alone with someone she could relate to. I decided to put this to the back of my mind. After all, just because it was a guy, that didn't mean anything, right? Well, the reason this is bookmarked in my mind is because I would come into contact with Jerry a lot, and I found out that my future wife, we'll call her Elisha, had a past romantic history with Jerry. Further, their interactions in my presence would often be interesting. My wife's accounts often vary, so putting together exactly what was going on is hard to do. According to Elisha, she and Jerry had crushes on each other when she was dating her first boyfriend. According to her, though she had many sexual partners, only one boyfriend. The time frames on her relationship with this boyfriend differ on the account. Sometimes she was dating him from her junior year of high school until her sophomore year in college. Another account had her dating him until her freshman year of college. She has said before that she used him, this boyfriend, sexually after they had split. She also said they were on again off again. She also stated at one point she and Jerry were behaving like a couple, but then he slept with one of her friends. But later she said that she had betrayed him first. I kind of think she was sleeping with Jerry while her boyfriend was under the impression they were still dating. I am outlining this because I wonder if the same thing hasn't happened to me. If it isn't repetitive behavior. So over the first 2 years of our dating, we were regular barflies. Elisha was an admitted flirt, and often flirted in front of me. To put it lightly, she didn't just flirt in front of me, but often spoke openly and in detail of her past sexual experiences with her former sexual partners. Again, often in front of me. Other than Jerry, she had had one other recurring FWB I can name. We will call him Mark. Now, Mark would turn out to be a legitimately good person. We are friends to this day. At the time, I came to hate him. He made it a habit to talk about the things he and Elisha would do sexually. Again, with her and in front of me. It's hard to listen to someone in your girlfriend's past talking about the person you're dating sitting on their face. With her replying yes I was. Other things during these first 2 years would bother me. I would often meet her out, to find her engaged in close conversation with a stranger, and couldn't be bothered to say hello to me. She often ended up surrounded by an impenetrable wall of guys, and I wouldn't even be able to speak to her for hours. Whenever Jerry came over, he always took the seat closest to her, and they sat very close. When he played video games, she would bring him a bowl of weed, and hold and light it for him. She would interrupt me to listen to what Jerry had to say. All the time. For a time Jerry was sleeping with the downstairs neighbor, but when coming to see her he would always head upstairs to see Elisha first. On one occasion her best friend came to visit her, and again she did not want me to come over so she could be alone with her friend, this one a female school friend. But she ended up inviting her close friend Snyder, as well as 4 other people over. She did this again on a night that was just supposed to be a girls' night. I was not to call or visit. She ended up inviting 4 guys, not including me, to hang out for girls' night. I really was trying to let these things go, but it became harder and harder to ignore them. I was becoming anxious and insecure. Now, I should also mention I had a daughter that I saw every other weekend. During this period, I fell into a period of unemployment. It was very hard to find a job, and I fell behind in child support. It was during one of our many recessions. At this point Elisha was doing an internship, and I tried to maintain contact with her. It was disheartening though, because whenever I called her she sounded completely disinterested, and would often carry on conversation with her friends around her while on the phone with me. One thing I took personally, I had to go to court once because I was behind on my payments. I almost went to jail, but cut a deal with my daughter's mother. I had just found a job, and asked her to give me 2 weeks to get together over $1,000. Naturally I was stressed, and ended up having to borrow money. I called Elisha to vent and maybe seek comfort, but again, she was not only disinterested. She was munching on her Chipotle and talking animatedly with her friends over the phone. No interest, no worry, no empathy. Nothing. A few weeks later she was going on a trip to an amusement park with people she knew from her internship. Again, she did not want me to come. But I found out others on the trip brought their significant others. Like I said, this shit builds, and becomes hard to forget. She would also go to a Christmas party with Jerry in which she admits Jerry was hitting on her. So now, let's skip ahead another year. She moves home, and we have a conversation about moving in. I get a small inheritance at the time that allows us to find a place, I get a job in her area, and we move in together. After nearly 2.5 years of ignoring her inconsiderate behavior, I finally talk to her about how much her flirting bothers me. She tells me a story about being at a nearby bar while I was gone, and she stated she told the bartender I would totally fuck you if I was single. I basically said I didn't need to hear that, and the next moment she got pissed, started screaming, and claimed she never said that, when she had literally just related the story to me. I would quickly begin to find out that Elisha had no tolerance whatsoever for criticism to her character. She hates it, and gets violently angry if questioned. Also, Jerry texts her late at night during this period, and I see what he texted her. When do I get to see that fine ass again? Time goes by, and everything is actually alright. Better than before, in fact. We establish a close group of friends, she and my daughter are getting closer, there are very few, if any, fights, everything is great. In this group are her cousin, and cousin's husband. This is important BTW. We'll call them Sunny and Cher. The only thing that was not great during this time was our sex life. For reasons I cannot explain, our sex life wasn't just slowing down, it was completely stopping. Elisha had almost no interest in sex. Well, after 3 years, this group of friends falls apart for various reasons. During this time Elisha and I became engaged. Things were still pretty okay between myself, Elisha, my daughter, and our friendship with Sunny and Cher. After a few years we got married, with Sunny presiding over the ceremony. Another year goes by, and things start to get dark. Very dark. Cher finds out Sunny has been cheating on her for years, and the two get divorced. Cher starts seeking consolation from Elisha, which is natural, they are friends and family. But then comes a very strange twist. Cher is going to totally satisfy her midlife crisis and begins to go out bar hopping and boy hunting like crazy. Now that alone is not the strange part. She insists on taking my wife with her almost every other night as her wingman. At this time I work a job that mandates, sometimes 3 to 4 times a week. I'm there often from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. And my wife is going out meeting guys while I am at work. She is less interested in intimacy than ever at this point. She often says it is because she is tired, but she has plenty of energy for going out. At one point she gleefully brags about a bouncer hitting on her, and the bartender helping him along. Apparently he told her, "Well, you must be here looking for something." I just want to say a few things about this incident, BTW. First, when I would go to this bar with her, she did seem awfully friendly with this bartender, let us call him George. One night during her birthday, she basically jumped at him and gave him a very close hug. She would later say he hugged her, but she was so drunk that night she fell flat on her face before even getting to the bar. I was still very sober. When I vented this to one of Elisha's friend, all I had to say was Elisha and George, and this friend literally broke out into tears. This was the most suspicious part. Later, someone who knew my wife and held a party my wife frequented would show up at work. When he learned where I lived, he asked if I knew Elisha and her boyfriend George. This might have been a mistake, but it's a hell of a coincidence. Also, there was a joke around the bar that George was not well endowed, but he was good at other things. Well, later Elisha would relate to me how disappointing it is to have sex with someone not very well endowed. She said she had sex with this one guy who was small, but he was good at other things. I might be reading too much into that part, I don't know. Something else strange happened at this time. There was a period of 2 months where Elisha and I had literally no sex. Sex had been an issue for years by now, but we had sporadic moments of intimacy. During this period, literally nothing. Well, what is strange is that Elisha missed her period for a month, and was afraid she might be pregnant. Whether she was or wasn't, I couldn't help wondering why she would think that was a possibility if she was only sleeping with me. I brought it up once, and Elisha characteristically flipped out. After this she would start taking birth control. And our sex life still stagnated. Around this time we attended a family wedding. I recall that after the wedding, she was drunk and started to talk about skinny dipping in the hotel swimming pool. My dad and brothers went to bed, and so did I had been up for 24 hours at least because of work. She ended up going with my cousin's husband while I lay down. I actually woke up 2 hours later, and she wasn't there. She was in the morning, but she would go on to say they didn't go skinny dipping, and she came right back. Which I know isn't true. Later, Elisha would go to Cher's house for a pool day. She took my daughter with her. One of our acquaintances, let us call him Frank, was there. Well, Elisha tells me about how Frank and Cher were highly inebriated, and Frank hit on her. Right in front of my daughter. I would later mention this, and Elisha got angry because she was worried I would piss off Cher and others present. It was at this point that I realized my wife cared far more about what those in her social circle thought, than what I did. Eventually the going out all the time, including on my days off without me, stopped when Cher met someone new, and eventually remarried. After that, BTW, Elisha almost never heard from Cher. I'm going to be completely honest, I started emotionally distancing myself, and even numbing myself to the idea of my wife being with another person at this point. I was even trying to make myself not care about sex. All of this was making me anxious. I even started having panic attacks. She would start to notice, too. The distancing, not the panic attacks. I told her about one I had when I was over at her cousin's on my break during a Super Bowl party. I had one before that at my previous job. I was sent to the hospital with extremely high blood pressure. I blacked out. So now, to the recent present. By that I am talking 2022 about now. A lot of things happened. I lost my job, got on unemployment, the unemployment was rescinded putting me in debt. I was accused of endangering another person at work, and ended up going to court, and now I am on probation. I fell into a whirlwind of depression and anxiety. I felt paralyzed. I didn't want to even leave home. I was becoming short-tempered and unmotivated. All this during the pandemic. Elisha had started a new career, and being the extrovert she is, was not taking being stuck inside well. Before the pandemic got really serious, Elisha went to Florida for work training. There was a night when she went to a Caribbean club, and was pursued by one of the patrons. Apparently the chef came out to tell her how beautiful she was, which struck me as odd. If the chef was in the back, how did he know to come out and tell a random stranger how she looked? Again, maybe I'm reading too much into this. Well, she called me once in the night to tell me these guys are really making me want to smoke weed. She called me again, supposedly on her way home, when an unfamiliar voice started screaming into the phone. I mean, it was so loud this person had to have his mouth to the receiver. Anyway, she called me back and told me it was the guy who pursued her. He was an Uber driver, and pulled over on the other side of the street to offer her a ride. This is what she told me while she was drunk. Sober, she said she bumped into him in person walking out of the club. But when she talked to me that night, she said she was already out of the club walking home. We both started going to therapy. Well, in the months leading up to her leaving, she was staying at work later and later. She said that it was because she had so much work, but she had no problem getting out if there was a dinner with work friends, or a ball game, or something. I went to her work friend's house with her once, sober the entire time. They at one point in the night started intimately holding hands and staring at each other. I am not mistaken there, I saw what I saw. This was a female co-worker, with a boyfriend. 3 days following this, Elisha says to me, "You know, I would still totally have a threesome. Just not with you, that would be weird." Elisha starts working out, spending more time on her appearance. She gets home later and later. I am working a 1 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift. She routinely gets home when I have only 4 to 5 hours. She went out one day to a 5-hour book club when we hadn't seen each other, and got home right when I needed to go to bed. She refuses to be careful with her weed around the house, even though I am on probation. I mean, she hangs a bag of her stuff right by the door and leaves her grinder out. Any attempt I make to talk about it is met with rage and shouting. Anytime I vent, I'm met with criticism and harsh reprimands, when she expects me to do the opposite and just listen. And I do. For the most part. There are times when my frustration bubbles to the surface and I snap. Not physically, I would never hit her. The only subjects she is interested in talking about anymore are her fitness goals and her job. She becomes increasingly more critical of me. This just causes me to be more silent, and more frustrated. All the frustration comes to a head over a single incident. 2 years prior, I became my daughter's primary guardian and her mom moved to Texas. Well, her mother waits to the last minute to schedule a flight, and the only days where work does not interfere with one of our schedules is on the weekend, her schedule in particular. Apparently my daughter's mother could not find a weekend flight that was continuous. This was found out by Elisha, who decided to contact her. I'll be honest, I did not consider it our responsibility to arrange flight to my daughter's mother. As a matter of fact, it is in the custody agreement that she is responsible for scheduling and finances in travel to and from Texas. Elisha does not communicate to me my daughter's mother's inability to find a weekend flight, or that Elisha took it upon herself to reach out. Elisha also takes it up herself to agree to a midweek time to take my daughter to the airport. What she does communicate to me is that my daughter's mother scheduled a flight to leave early in the morning on a Wednesday. The airport is 2 hours away. She tells me the flight will leave 7 a.m. at the latest, and she expected to be home 10 a.m. at the latest. Now, since Elisha had work at 9 a.m., I figured she had arranged the day off, especially if she intended to be back at 10 a.m. at the latest. These were the talking points I was given, and had knowledge of. Elisha got a hotel near the airport, and asked if I wanted to come with her. I did end up having that night off. I had not, however, slept in days, was absolutely exhausted, and had a therapy session the next day at 11 a.m. Traffic in the area around the airport can get heavy approaching 8 to 9 a.m., and I was afraid of missing my session. Which was part of my probation. Meaning, missing it could lead to a contempt of court order. In actuality, the flight was leaving at 6 a.m., I was not told this, and Elisha would get home at 8 a.m. However, under the impression she was counting on driving through heavy traffic after a flight leaving at 7 a.m., and a plan to be back at, no later than, 10 a.m., I thought it would be cutting it close. I declined to go with my wife to the hotel. When she tried to ask me again, sleep-deprived and annoyed at her constantly leaving paraphernalia everywhere and paying no regard to my schedule, I snapped at her. She left angry, got back the next morning, and still went to work. She had not requested the day off and would not call off. That night, we had a conversation. She asked how long it had been since we had been happy. I told her since that time she was going out with her cousin. The weekend following, she stated that something broke in her that night, and she didn't want to pretend anymore. She said she didn't think we should be together anymore, and that when I told her the time for which I had been unhappy, it broke her heart. I asked her if she knew why I said that. She said no. And I outlined a good deal of what I wrote here, though not everything. She said she was going to her parents' for a few days, then loaded up way more things than, I felt, she could have fit into her parents' tiny house. I haven't seen her since. She didn't even come to personally talk about our situation with my daughter after she got back, for which my daughter was devastated. I don't know for certain, but I can't help but feel there was something more to this. Maybe not though. Maybe it was a series of really bad coincidences brought on by our differing personalities. Still, I can't shake the feeling that there is something else. Update. Wife's friend confirmed cheating. As many pointed out, it didn't really need to be confirmed, but my wife confessed to a friend that when she was going out with her cousin, she had a three-way makeup session. I'm guessing it was more than a makeup session, with her cousin and the bouncer I mentioned in my original post. She was also recently caught texting her other lover before she left. I know people keep saying this is fiction, but it isn't. I'm furious, and I can't stop thinking about it. Now for the top comments. Honestly mate, I couldn't finish reading that previous post. I mean, how much abuse can one person take? I let it ruin me. I mentioned previously, I felt guilty for not trusting her. I made a commitment, and I really wanted to make it work. I didn't want to be another divorcee. I know I was ignoring my better judgment, and I'm suffering the consequences of it. The fact that so many people, including myself, genuinely thought your story was complete fiction serves as a huge sign that this is not normal. Going on to marry this woman and putting yourself through all this abuse when every single red flag possible was shown to you from the very beginning, is wild. Bringing your daughter into this toxic situation is even wilder. If you haven't already planned your divorce immediately, do it. There's no need for anyone to remind you how there has never been any real marriage here. She never respected it, or you. She's cruel and she walks all over you because you have never stopped her. She knows you won't leave. Research trauma bonding. Moving on, healing and being alone for the first time is not easy at first, although in a way, you have actually been alone throughout this relationship. Don't let temporary emotions, missing her, thinking about the good times, missing intimacy, make you go back. Make a list of the times she has violated your trust or hurt you, to remind yourself why you left. Read over it frequently. Therapy and building your self-respect, confidence and self-esteem is essential for you. You must get to the root of your issues, and heal from whatever caused you to tolerate this behavior for so long. Good luck to you and your daughter. Okay, you are definitely the victim of an abusive relationship. I can't wrap my head around why you ever stayed with a woman like this. She's practically a free-for-all. I'm happy you're seeking therapy because you clearly have an extremely low self-esteem that you need to work on. She tested your limits at every single step of the relationship. She disrespected you almost every single day of your relationship from the start, and you continually rewarded her for it. Don't waste another second of your life thinking about her. You suffered for 13 years. Be happy you got out and this dark cloud has been eliminated from your life. Celebrate this new chapter. Rejoice with the fact that she will never have a peaceful, happy relationship in her life because of who she is, and no man will ever take her seriously like you did. Spend some time alone with your daughter, give her an example of what self-respect looks like before it's too late. And when you're ready, find someone who will be a good example to your daughter instead of the trash you found before. Hate to say it man, but you honestly got what you deserved. And I mean that with the utmost respect, but you gotta grow a fucking spine. She has them tested you like shit for so long, and you just take the shit and keep shoveling it. WTF kinda man is okay with his GF skinny dipping with his cousin's husband. You have been a doormat for so long, that's all you know how to be. On your first post you made it clear that she was acting shady AF throughout the entire relationship. She has been cheating on you since day one. You knew about all this shit and kept her. Why would she change when she gets her cake and to eat it too? I mean, I feel sorry for you because of what a pushover you are. You ain't got no friends, you ain't got no family that would tell you you should have let your balls drop a long time ago and been a man. Well, that's all for the video today. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, have an amazing day.